U.S. Navy ship and 3 British Royal Navy ships were reportedly forced to change course after an encounter with Iranian boats in the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. officials said Monday, March 6, that multiple fast attack vessels from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy came within 600 yards of the USNS Invincible, forcing the American ocean surveillance ship to change course. 3 British Royal Navy vessels accompanying the Invincible at the time were also reportedly forced to move. BBC News cited a U.S. official who said that an Iranian boat attempted to place itself between the U.S. and British ships. No warning shots or flares were fired. The incident marks the latest in a series of encounters between U.S. and Iranian vessels in the Persian Gulf, incidents that the Navy said are happening more regularly. For Newsbeat Social from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
On Tuesday, the U.S. State Department has said that the United States has told China that Washington's deployment of the anti-missile defense system THAAD in South Korea is a defensive measure against North Korean threats and does not pose a threat to China. State Department spokesperson Mark Toner, in a news briefing, said, "We have been very clear in our conversations with China that this is not meant to be a threat, and that this is not a threat to them or any other power in the region."
Tensions in East Asia are rising after the U.S. began sending parts for a missile defense system to South Korea on Monday. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD, works by sensing incoming missiles and shooting them out of the sky. But the THAAD system isn't perfect. A North Korean monitoring group says a nuclear weapon destroyed in the air could still have material that leaks and harms people on the ground. The system might get overwhelmed if it tries to take out multiple ballistic missiles at once. A day before the U.S. started shipping it to South Korea, North Korea launched 4 test missiles. The monitoring group says having 2 THAAD systems in South Korea could protect the whole country from the north, which the U.S. military says is the only area the defense system will be focused on. But China has long considered putting the system in South Korea a threat. One expert says the nation fears THAAD radar could be used to spy on China. South Korea's government thinks China could turn to a trade war in response to THAAD. China is South Korea's largest trade.
Bird flu strikes again. A deadly form of the virus was found in a southern Tennessee farm that supplies chickens to Tyson Foods. This marks the first U.S. case at a commercial farm so far this year. Government and company officials say about 73,500 birds were euthanized over the weekend to stop the virus from entering the food system. The USDA established a quarantine on the chicken farms around the area, and Tyson said it was testing all flocks located within a 6-mile radius to determine whether the bird flu had spread. A number of Asian countries, including South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, have limited imports of U.S. poultry after the disease was detected. Different strains of the bird flu have been confirmed across parts of Asia and Europe in recent months. For Newsbeat Social New York, I'm Rumi Fukushima.
On Tuesday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that the plight of the Somali people has been largely neglected amid the impending threat of widespread famine. The UN estimates that over 6 million people, more than half of Somalia's population, is currently in need of humanitarian assistance. The UN has launched an appeal requesting $825 million for the first half of the year in order to conduct a pre-famine program in Somalia. In addition to drought and famine, diseases such as cholera and measles are beginning to spread at an alarming rate. The World Health Organization has reported over 6,000 cases of cholera since early January, as well as 2,500 cases involving suspected measles. The International Organization for Migration warns that if action is not taken immediately, early warning signals point towards a growing humanitarian crisis in Somalia of potentially catastrophic proportions.
Smog levels have risen in the western U.S., but the source of the pollution may be further away than you expect. Research by scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Environmental Protection Agency suggests that pollution from Asian countries has drifted across the Pacific Ocean for the past 25 years and contributed to smog, or ground-level ozone, in the western United States. The researchers analyzed ozone data recorded from 1980 to 2014 in urban and rural areas in the western U.S., including national parks. They published their findings March 1st in the Atmospheric Chemistry and Physics Journal. The researchers said that, despite cutting smog-forming pollutants in the U.S. by 50%, the increase in man-made emissions in Asia has driven the rise of ozone in the western U.S. According to NPR, the researchers said their work was funded by NASA grants and used data that's available online. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Cambry Caldwell.
According to a report, dozens of tornadoes struck overnight in the U.S. states of Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, and Illinois. The Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, said in a statement that the same storm system brought huge hailstones and powerful winds from the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas to as far north as Wisconsin. In Smithville, Missouri, between 60 and 70 homes were damaged or destroyed, while dozens of homes were damaged in the nearby suburb of Leawood. No serious injuries have so far been reported.
According to police on Tuesday, an avalanche, which hit a ski slope in the popular French Alps resort of Tignes, has engulfed many skiers. An AFP journalist at the scene claimed that rescue workers and sniffer dogs had been mobilized at the sprawling resort in the hopes of finding survivors. Poor visibility has prevented the deployment of helicopters to the scene, which is close to where an avalanche last month killed 4 people. The avalanche risk, normally assessed only for off-piste and closed slopes, was at 4 on a possible scale of 5. At level 5, all slopes would be closed.
This attack on members of the Jewish faith is not just an attack on them, it's an attack on everybody in New York City.
Adding to the scores they have been plagued with since January, the Anti-Defamation League and several Jewish community centers across the country got a new round of bomb threats Tuesday. Since January 9th, federal officials have been investigating more than 120 threats against Jewish organizations in 36 states. A rash of vandalism at Jewish cemeteries has also been a plague. The JCC Association of North America said over the course of Monday evening and Tuesday, there were 8 emailed or phoned-in bomb threats in 6 states, plus Ontario. Also, Tuesday, authorities said 2 suburban Jewish community centers in upstate New York were shut down when someone phoned in bomb threats.
The melee over clowns has apparently spread into 2017. Police in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, say they're investigating a report that 2 men dressed as clowns carrying weapons chased a group of kids who were playing in the woods. The father of one of the boys, Michael Makowski, said that he called police after his 3 kids came home terrified. Makowski says the kids then pointed out 2 men in clown costumes who were running away, one carrying a shotgun and the other a pipe. Police say they found no such individuals after a 2-hour search.
U.S. senators are calling on the Trump administration to take action on recent threats against the Jewish community. Since the beginning of 2017, Jewish community centers, day schools, and synagogues have received waves of anonymous bomb threats and been targets of vandalism. The threats have prompted evacuations in over 30 states, most recently on Tuesday at facilities in New York, Florida, Wisconsin, and Illinois. President Donald Trump has condemned the threats, but the administration has not taken explicit steps to curb them. All 100 U.S. senators signed a letter to Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and FBI Director James Comey, saying they fear the administration's silence will, quote, place innocent people.
Casey Anthony has broken her silence after being acquitted of murder charges in the 2008 death of her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee. Anthony's 2011 trial became publicly known, and she was eventually found not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and aggravated child abuse. She was, however, convicted of 4 counts of lying to police. During a recent interview, Anthony said she understands why some people think she's guilty, but she insists she doesn't know what happened to Kaylee. She says she doesn't care about other people's opinions, stating, "I'm okay with myself. I sleep pretty good at night."
China's foreign ministry has called the Dalai Lama a deceptive actor. The ministry made those comments after the Dalai Lama was interviewed on the HBO show Last Week Tonight. Host John Oliver traveled to Dharamshala, India to meet with the Dalai Lama. During the interview, the Dalai Lama criticized Chinese leaders for being small-minded and mocked Beijing's portrayal of him as a demon. A spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry points out the interview occurred on an entertainment program. The spokesman added, quote, "Now it seems he is an actor who is very good at performing and very deceptively." China has branded the Dalai Lama as a dangerous separatist who fled into exile to India after a failed uprising against Chinese rule in 1959. The Dalai Lama has previously suggested his current title might end with him instead of being passed on to another person upon his death. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
Cocaine use rates are skyrocketing in the U.S. for the first time in a decade. In addition, the number of overdose deaths in the U.S. that involved cocaine in 2015 was the highest since 2006. The most recent national survey on drug use and health found that the number of Americans who admitted to trying cocaine for the first time increased by 61% from 2013 to 2015. Citing a State Department report on the global narcotics trade, the Washington Post reports a sudden change in cocaine use here is due to the sharp increase in Colombia's illegal coca crops. The report asserts that 90% of cocaine seized on the streets in the U.S. is Colombian.
Hundreds of transgender rights supporters backed the Texas Capitol on Tuesday, seeking to speak out against a North Carolina-style bathroom bill. The bill would require transgender people to use public bathrooms that correspond with the sex on their birth certificate. But unlike in North Carolina, the Texas bill has split conservatives and faces a tougher road. Republican House Speaker Joe Straus again made it clear he has little appetite for the bill, even if it does clear the Senate. Straus repeatedly denounced it as bad for the Texas economy.
Nike is introducing a new line of Muslim-friendly sportswear. It will include a hijab head covering featuring the Nike swoosh brand logo. The company says the new Nike Pro Hijab comes after many years of advocacy and product development. It is made of light, stretchy material and has an extended cape to keep the covering from becoming untucked during movement. A Nike swoosh is inscribed above the wearer's ears. Figure skater Zara Lari celebrated the new product. She told Vogue Arabic, "People may think or tell you that you can't do certain things, but I'm going to show them you absolutely can. I am covered. I am Muslim."
Trump has an ultimatum for Planned Parenthood. The White House has made an informal pitch to Planned Parenthood, offering continued federal funding to the nation's largest abortion business if it agrees to stop performing abortions. Trump reportedly said, "Polling shows the majority of Americans oppose public funding for abortion, even those who identify as pro-choice." But Don Legans, executive vice president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, rejected Trump's proposal, saying, "Let's be clear, federal funds already..."
On Tuesday, a federal judge declined to temporarily stop construction of the final section of the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline. This means the way is cleared for oil to flow as soon as next week. The Standing Rock and Cheyenne River Sioux tribes promised to maintain their legal battle against the project. The tribes had asked Judge James Boasberg to tell the Army Corps of Engineers to withdraw permission to lay pipe under Lake Oahe in North Dakota. The section under the Missouri River Reservoir in southern North Dakota is the last stretch of construction for the pipeline to move North Dakota oil to Illinois.
An updated crossing signal has upset some in Melbourne. On March 7th, Melbourne installed 10 pedestrian traffic lights that featured women instead of men. The installations will eventually make up half of the city's traffic lights. The move stems from the Committee for Melbourne, a non-profit made up of business and community entities. The purpose behind the installations, according to Committee for Melbourne CEO Martine Letts, is to combat, quote, unconscious bias which reinforces stereotypes and influences daily decisions and attitudes. But the move drew criticism. Some found fault in the committee's decision to use an antiquated Mary Poppins figure for the traffic lights. According to the Telegraph, others called it feminism at its worst and criticised the campaign as an example of unnecessary political correctness. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
The Associated Press is reporting that a severe storm pummeled parts of the Midwest overnight with tornadoes, huge hailstones, and powerful winds, damaging nearly 500 buildings and injuring a dozen people in one Missouri city. Powerful winds extended as far south as the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, where a post office and church were damaged, and as far north as Wisconsin, where trees were downed. In Oak Grove, Missouri, 483 homes sustained some type of damage, along with 10 to 12 commercial buildings, said Sne Valley Fire Protection District Chief Carl Scarborough.
A number of Jewish community centers throughout the country have gotten a new series of bomb threats this week. Federal officials have investigated more than 120 threats against Jewish organizations in 36 states since January, as well as vandalism at Jewish cemeteries. 8 emailed or phone bomb threats were made in 6 states, as well as Ontario, Canada this week. Threats have also been made to the New York-based Anti-Defamation League. Many Jewish community centers have temporarily closed until the threats subside.
On Tuesday, North Korea said it has temporarily banned Malaysians from leaving the country. This was reportedly done to ensure the safety of its diplomats and citizens in Malaysia. There has been a mounting crisis over the killing of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's half-brother. The country's foreign ministry notified the Malaysian embassy in Pyongyang of the reason for the ban. It said it had hoped the case would be quickly and fairly resolved. This is in hopes of developing bilateral ties.
On Monday, President Donald Trump made an offer to Planned Parenthood that stated he would provide government funding to the nonprofit health organization if they would discontinue their abortion services. While Planned Parenthood has stated that 97% of their services are non-abortive, President of the organization, Cecile Richards, denied the offer and tweeted, "Planned Parenthood is proud to provide abortion, a necessary service that's as vital to our mission as birth control or cancer screenings."
Breitbart has reported protests at several California airports on Monday, greeting President Donald Trump's new executive order suspending travel from terror-prone countries. These protests are smaller and less vociferous than those in January. The new executive order takes into account some of the criticisms of the first. It does not apply to Iraq. It exempts those who have already been granted entry into the U.S., and it provides travelers with advance notice so that they have time to change plans. According to local news outlets in San Diego, dozens of travelers gathered at Lindbergh Field to protest the new order, calling it a Muslim ban.
The team behind the Women's March is at it again. They are organizing an event called A Day Without a Woman, in which they are encouraging women to strike from work. The event is to be held on Wednesday, March 8th, which is also International Women's Day. The Women's March explained the purpose of the event on its official website, where it called it a recognition of the enormous value that women add to the socio-economic system. The team is encouraging women via social media to participate by wearing red, spending money at women or minority-owned businesses, and taking the day off from paid and unpaid labor. They hope for this event, too, to make waves on the internet.
Breaking up is hard to do, especially if you have to ask 800-plus people for permission first. The UK's House of Lords has once again blocked a Brexit bill that would let the country start negotiating its way out of the European Union with no strings attached. This time, the Lords voted to give Parliament a veto on the final terms of any Brexit deal before it becomes official. If the UK wants to walk away from the EU with no deal, it will need Parliament sign-off for that too. The UK government says it's already promised to let Parliament have a vote on the deal. The government argues voting against a deal-free Brexit will only create confusion about the UK's status in the EU. The revised bill goes back to the House of Commons, which is expected to strike down the changes and send it right back to the Lords. The bill will keep ping-ponging between the two chambers until they can both agree on a final version.
A new wearable air purifier aims at keeping the air people breathe clean while they commute through polluted cities. Vibra Solutions, a company specializing in air purification tech, has revealed a new wearable device that the company claims will improve air quality for users wherever they go. Similar to normal air purifiers, the wearable devices use negative ions to improve air quality, but does so while being worn around a person's neck. However, plans to bring the Vibra Solutions wearable air purifier to the consumer market remain uncertain, and no word has been given on the device's exact pricing details.
The World Health Organization reports that 1.7 million young children die each year because of environmental pollutants. According to two WHO reports released March 6, 1 in 4 deaths of children under the age of 5 is caused by pollutants like indoor and outdoor air pollution, secondhand smoke, unsafe water, and poor sanitation and hygiene. In one report, the WHO says a significant amount of the most common environmental causes of death among children in the 1 month to 5 years old age group can be prevented by things like access to safe water and clean cooking fuels. The WHO calls the other report a companion report and says it provides a more expansive view of the environment's impact on child health and mortality. In a statement from the WHO, Director General Margaret Chan said, quote, "A polluted environment is a deadly one, particularly for young children." For Newsbeat Social, I'm Cambry Caldwell.
Drought and famine are about more than weather or starvation. These devastations are often highly political. Many of the countries that experience these crises go through them over and over again. We're seeing this now with Somalia, and countries nearby are in danger of the same thing. But because governments are typically the ones to declare the crisis, support from the global community often comes too late. A heated conflict can create holes in aid and pretty much ruin the economy. That's what happened in Somalia. In Ethiopia, experts blame a repeating cycle of famine on the authoritarian regime. Authoritarian leaders often put power and image before people. The problem is, lasting solutions aren't being enacted to change the repetitive history. Backing and funding local farmers could help. It would not only help the local economy, but offer a sustainable way to provide food for more people than aid alone. Another idea is joining and purchasing insurance through the African Union. But one of the biggest issues is that there's not an international organization to keep watch and be the first to call a drought or famine. With climate change, droughts will happen more often, but a global effort could help.
Crews fighting frustrating wildfires may soon get a break. Winds are forecast to ease from the gusts that whipped the flames. The fires have burned hundreds of square miles of land in 4 states and killed 6 people. One forecaster said Wednesday the powerful wind gusts that fanned the wildfires in Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas should diminish to about 10 to 20 miles per hour. Temperatures will remain mild and humidity low. These conditions will make it slightly easier for firefighting efforts. In addition to those 4 states, conditions may cause fires in Iowa, Missouri, and Nebraska. This is after powerful thunderstorms moved through the middle of the country Tuesday night.
Since a civil conflict erupted years ago in Syria, 11 million people have been displaced from their communities. In Syria's province of Idlib, that shares a border with Turkey, upwards of 900,000 refugees are seeking shelter. According to the United Nations, they comprise 1/2 of the province's total population. For refugees in the camps, daily life is dull, with little to occupy themselves with. Although fear of further upheaval hangs like an atmosphere, refugees like Mohammed Musa and his family are only focused on surviving.
Many political experts believe that U.S. President Donald Trump's replacement for Obamacare is not very different. Trump stated that he would repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, but it feels more like he repealed it just so he could change its name. His supporters feel completely distraught because this is not the change he promised them. How is he making America great again if he's not doing anything to make it great? His supporters hope that he turns this around.